ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदा। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 26. King Puranjana goes to the forest to hunt. We are at text 18. Just a minute. Yeah, text 18. So today there was some glitch in the software. We could not start in time. But this is part of the life. Okay. Yesterday I was hearing one very beautiful point. Our Brajavihari Prabhu talks about this. He talks about importance of relaxation in life, importance of you know being human, and joy of being insignificant. Okay, so these are like very important points. So sometimes it is okay to be. Text 18. Narada Uvacha. Puranjanam swamahishim nirakshavadutam bhuvi tat sango matthito jnano vaiklavyam paramam yayo. Translation.
The great sage Narad continued, My dear King Prachin Bharishat, as soon as King Puranjana saw his queen lying on the ground, appearing like a mendicant, he immediately became bewildered. Purport. In this verse, the word avadhutam is especially significant, for it refers to a mendicant who does not take care of his body. Since the queen was lying on the ground without bedding and proper dress, King Puranjana became very much aggrieved. In other words, he repented that he had neglected his intelligence and had engaged himself in the forest in killing animals. In other words, when one's good intelligence is separated or neglected, he fully engages in sinful activities. Due to neglecting one's good intelligence or Krishna consciousness, one becomes bewildered and engages in sinful activities. Upon realizing this, a man becomes repentant. Such repentance is described by Narottama Das Thakur. हरि हरि विफले जन्म गोनैनु मनुष्य जन्म पय्या राधा कृष्ण न भजिया जानिया शुनिया विष खैनु. Narottam Thakur herein says that he repents for having spoiled his human life and knowingly drunk poison. By not being Krishna conscious, one willingly drinks the poison of material life. The purport is that one certainly becomes addicted to sinful activities when he becomes devoid of his good chaste wife, or when he has lost his good sense and does not take to Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So Puranjan, when he saw and he could realize that his wife is lying on the ground without a proper bedding or proper dress, and thus lying like a Avadut, a mendicant, he became bewildered. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, Avadut word is very significant as it refers to mendicant who does not take care of his body. Right? They are called as Avadut. So the queen was lying on the ground without bedding or the proper dress. And seeing this, the king became very, very aggrieved. It's like he was thinking, what kind of tantrum this is? And Srila Prabhupada says, this is exactly the condition of living entity. What is the queen here? The queen is nothing but the intelligence. When the intelligence is without proper engagement and is without proper direction, what happens is when one's intelligence is neglected, one becomes fully engaged in materialistic activities and worst of that then sinful activities, right? And therefore it is very important to engage one's intelligence. So it is very important that, and our intelligence also, manasa rajahamsa, it should delight in the spiritual topics, right? Otherwise it becomes bewildered and engages into sinful activities. And this is being sung by Narottam Das Thakur. मनुष्य जन्म पाइया राधा कृष्ण ना भजिया जानिया शुनिया विष खाइनु. What is this visha? Visha means it is the visha of the materialistic way of life. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, the purport is that when one certainly becomes, when one is devoid of one's good chaste wife on a grosser platform, one becomes addicted to sinful activities, right? Or when one is devoid of one's good sense, good intelligence, one will be one will be addicted to so many different kinds of sinful activities, and then it will culminate in loss of Krishna consciousness. And therefore the intelligence has to be engaged properly. Intelligence always needs engagement, mind needs engagement, senses needs engagement, and they have to be suitably engaged, right? Text 19. सान्त्वन् लक्षणया वाचा हृदयेन विद्यता प्रेयस्या स्नेह संरब्धा लिंगमात्मनि नाम्यगात्. Translation.
Translation: The king with aggrieved mind began to speak to his wife with very pleasing words. Although he was filled with regret and tried to pacify her, he could not see any symptom of anger caused by love within the heart of his beloved wife. Purport: The king very much regretted having left his queen and having gone to the forest to execute sinful activities. When a person regrets his sinful activities, the abandoning of Krishna consciousness and good intelligence, his path of deliverance from the path of material clutches is opened. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.5, Parabhavas tvada abodha jato yavanna jigyasat atma tattvam. When a person loses his Krishna consciousness and loses interest in self-realization, he must engage in sinful activities. All one's activities in a life devoid of Krishna consciousness simply lead to defeat and misuse of one's life. Naturally, one who comes to Krishna consciousness regrets his previous sinful activities in the human form. Only by this process can one be delivered from the clutches of nescience or ignorance in materialistic life. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So with aggrieved mind, he began to speak with his wife with his very pleasing words. Salakshanaya vacha. Salakshanaya vacha. By very sweet words. Hridayena viduyata. Right. So viduyata, greatly regretting at the heart, he began to. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, when a person regrets his sinful activities, right, then, so two things here. One is thing is, if we do not engage in the spiritual activities, or after being engaged in spiritual activities, if we take a detour and start with material activities, giving up one's Krishna consciousness, then that is considered to be real parabhava. Parabhavas tavad abodha jata yad na jidnyasa yadatma tattvam. That is the huge parabhava of the human form of life. And therefore, one must engage in the activities of self realization, and at the same time, one should regret for past sinful activities. See, when we, from the very scorching hot sun of materialistic life, when we come to the shadow of Krishna consciousness, there is a great relief. But after receiving the relief in Krishna consciousness, you know, when we are in shadow, then we see who are other people are there, and then, we try to find fault with them, pick up quarrels with them. So that is not the idea. One should be always aware. Srila Prabhupada is going to stress the same thing again in the Ajamil pastime. One should be, not one should be aware in the sense one is meditating on the previous sinful activities, but one should know where one is coming from, and therefore should regret one's sinful activities in the human form, and only by this process one can be delivered from the clutches of materialistic life. Text 20. अनुन्येथ शनकैर्वीरो अनुनयको विदः पस्पर्श पादयुगलाम् आह चोत्साङ्गलं lalitam. Translation.
Because the king was very expert in flattery, he began to pacify his queen very slowly. First, he touched her 2 feet, then embraced her nicely, sitting her on his lap, and began to speak as follows. Purport. One has to awaken his Krishna consciousness by first regretting his past deeds. Just as King Puranjana began to flatter his queen, one should, by deliberate consideration, raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness. To attain such an end, one must touch the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Krishna consciousness cannot be achieved by self-endeavor. One must therefore approach a self-realized Krishna conscious person and touch his lotus feet. Prahlad Maharaj therefore said, Naishamatistu tavad urukramangrim sprashyati anartha gamo yad artha mahiyasham padarajobhishekam nishkinchananam nam na vranita yavat. Bhagavatam 7.5.32. One cannot come to the precincts of Krishna consciousness unless he touches the dust of the lotus feet of a person who has become a Mahatma, a great devotee. This is the beginning of the surrendering process. Lord Krishna wants everyone to surrender unto him, and this surrendering process begins when one touches the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. By sincerely rendering service to a bona fide spiritual master, one begins his spiritual life in Krishna consciousness. Touching the lotus feet of the spiritual master means giving up one's false prestige and unnecessarily puffed up position in the material world. Those who remain in the darkness of material existence due to their falsely prestigious positions, so-called scientists and philosophers, are actually atheists. They do not know the ultimate cause of everything. Although bewildered, they are not ready to surrender themselves to the lotus feet of a person who knows things in their proper perspective. In other words, one cannot arouse Krishna consciousness simply by his own mental speculation. One must surrender to a bona fide spiritual master. Only this process will help one.
Yeah. The king was expert in flattery, and he began to pacify the queen very slowly. Touched her 2 feet and embraced her nicely. Seating her on his lap, he began to speak as follows. Right. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives the spiritual connotation of this. One has to awaken one's Krishna consciousness by first regretting one's past deeds and begin to flatter. That means one should deliberately, slow deliberate conception, one should raise oneself to Krishna consciousness. What this means is this means is that one should have encouraging self-talk. Okay. So encouraging self-talk means many times what happens is we are excessively critical of oneself. There are people who are excessively critical of others. Okay, that is the worst thing to be. There are people who are very considerate to others, but very harsh on themselves. Of course, that doesn't mean that we have to indulge in self-pampering or the self-indulgence. But the point is that just like we are kind to others, we should kind to be oneself also. Like somebody is doing some weight loss program, you should have some cheat day because we are not machines. Thankfully, we are not machines. So the some slip of this thing from the very strict standard is going to happen. So one should have a very self-encouraging mindset, and it should not go to another extreme also, right? Like people have the self-help books which talk about you simply do manifestation, this and that. So it should not be one extreme of excessive self criticism, and it should not be another extreme of self indulgence. One has to be balanced, right? Tomorrow is yoga day. Yoga is all about balance. So one has to be balanced and one has to encourage oneself. And Robert says, and then one should touch the lotus feet of the spiritual master because this is how one can achieve Krishna consciousness. Mahiyasam pada rajobhishekam. Krishna consciousness cannot be achieved, it has to be bestowed upon by the spiritual master. And therefore, one should begin to surrender. Ultimately, we have to surrender. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. But we cannot directly surrender to Krishna, and therefore we surrender to the representative of Krishna, who is spiritual master. And that means one has to give up the false prestige and the puffed up position in the material world. And Srila Prabhupada especially quotes scientists and philosophers who are completely bewildered but think they know everything and thus just pass a life in delusion. Text 21. So here one point in text 20, flattery. Expert in flattery. Okay. So what this word flattery means is that one should be very quick in giving appreciation. Right. It is very important. One should appreciate others. And there are called as three things of appreciation. This I have read in, You Can Win, Shiv Khera book. He says that the appreciation should be quick, to the point, and it should be very genuine. Right. And it should be genuine. Genuine means that it should be really coming from the heart. You should really feel a kind of appreciation. It should be quick, that oh, wonderful Prabhuji, very nice, uh, you know very nice, whatever arrangements or something like that. So it should be quick, it should be to the point. It should be to the point means when we are glorifying, we should say, oh, wonderful, this amka achar was excellently made, right? And it should be genuine. Genuine means we should really feel like that, and it should not be sarcastic appreciation. Right. It should not be like when sabji mein salt is come, then you say, wow, 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 sabji is very tasty. Right. Or you should not say like, salt mein sabji dala hai, sabji mein salt dala hai. Right. So, so this is the importance of genuine appreciation. This is very, very important in Grihastha life, in every life, but especially in the Grihastha life. And we have to appreciate, along with the whole world, we have to appreciate the near and dear ones. Okay, that is also very important. Generally, we end up being good to everybody else except to our near people and except to oneself. So this has to be avoided. Puranjana Uvacha. Text 21. Puranjana Uvacha. Nunam tatkrutam punyaste Brutva Veshveshwara Shubhe Kritaga Kritagas Atmasat Kritva Shiksha Dandam na Yunjate. Translation.
King Puranjana said, My dear beautiful wife, when a master accepts a servant as his own man, but does not punish him for his offenses, the servant must be considered unfortunate. Purport: according to Vedic civilization, domestic animals and servant are treated exactly like one's own children. Animals and children are sometimes punished not out of vengeance but out of love. Similarly, a master sometimes punishes his servant not out of vengeance but out of love, to correct him and bring him to the right point. Thus, King Puranjana took his punishment dealt by his wife, the queen, as mercy upon him. He considered himself the most obedient servant of the queen. She was angry at him for his sinful activities, namely hunting in the forest and leaving her at home. King Puranjana accepted the punishment as actual love and affection from his wife. In the same way, when a person is punished by the laws of nature, by the will of God, he should not be disturbed. A real devotee thinks in this way. When a devotee is put into an awkward position, he takes it as the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Tatenukampam susukshama Tatenukampam susumikshmano Bhunjana evatmakritam vipakam Ridvag vipurbhir viditham namaste Jive tayo mukti padesa dayabha. Bhagavatam 10.14.8. This verse states that the devotee accepts a reversal of his position in life as a benediction by the Lord and consequently offers the Lord more obeisances and prayers, thinking that the punishment is due to his past misdeeds and that the Lord is punishing him very mildly. The punishment awarded by the state or by God for one's own faults is actually for one's benefit. In Madhu Samhita, it is said that the king should be considered merciful when he condemns a murderer to death because a murderer punished in this life becomes freed from his sinful activity and in the next life takes birth cleared of all sins. If one accepts punishment as a reward dealt by the master, he becomes intelligent enough not to commit the same mistake again. Hare Krishna.
Puranjano Vacha. Puranjana said that when a master accepts a servant as his own, then he does not punish him for his offenses, the servant must be considered unfortunate. Okay, the worst punishment is upeksha. And this upeksha, that means that is considered as the complete. This is really unfortunate situation. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that in the Vedic civilization, domestic animals and servants are exactly treated like one's own children. And therefore, just like children's needs to be trained, tadiyet dashavarshani, right? Similarly, sometimes the animals and the children are punished not out of vengeance but out of love. And therefore, the punishment, Prabhupada writes, is a sign of love, and therefore it has to be accepted accordingly. And the king accepted this as a punishment, and he began to speak very sweetly. And Srila Prabhupada gives the purport that in the same way, when we are practicing Krishna consciousness and then there are some reversals in our life, or if there are some punishments in our life, we should accept it with grateful heart. It's very important. Right. And Srila Prabhupada quotes Lord Brahma's prayer here. Tati anukampa, su sama ikshamanu. Realizing that this is the anukampa of the Supreme Lord, and therefore devotee sees with the equal vision, su sama ikshamanu. Ultimately knowing gunjana evatma kritam vipakam. These are the causes. All this thing is coming due to my own sinful activities. But the glory is that the punishment is coming, but the punishment is coming in a very mild form. Right? One devotee was cutting sabji one day and suddenly his finger got cut and blood started oozing. And he ran to Prabhupada and said that, Prabhupada, I'm engaged in Krishna service. How my finger got cut? And Prabhupada said, actually your throat was supposed to be cut. But because you are engaged in Krishna service, it just, you are just spared with a small cut on the finger. So realizing that this is a reduced punishment, devotee, Ridvak Vapurbhir Vidadhan Namaste. He offers his obeisances with his heart, Rid Vak with his Vani, and Vapurbhir. He is grateful in the heart He's serving, he's offering obeisances through the body, and Prabhupada says offers more obeisances and prayers, thinking that punishment is due to the past misdeeds, and the Lord is punishing him very mildly. And this is Jivetayo Mukti Padesa. Such a person is considered as the eligible candidate to go back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada quotes Manu Samhita, that Manu Samhita there is a capital punishment, that a murderer should be hanged. And nowadays, there is so much of a discussion. Oh no, they are also human. And the problem is the woke people, they will humanize the terrorist. Instead of calling Bill Laden, they will say, no, no, he's a son of a headmaster. And you just humanize the terrorist. And what happens is that is the worst thing you can do for a terrorist, because if such a criminal is not hanged or encountered, what happens is that he will carry that huge karma life after life and will be miserable for the existence. And therefore, this capital punishment is actually one form of mercy by the king, as per Manu Samhita. Srila Prabhupada closes the purport with a very beautiful statement. If one accepts a punishment as a reward dealt by the master, he becomes intelligent enough not to repeat the mistake again. Right. And therefore, it is very important that we remain teachable. Right. This is very important word. We remain teachable. We remain open for a feedback. We remain teachable. Then only we can improve. Otherwise, if we think that I know everything and I'm also doing bhakti for 20 years, what I also know, then there is no question of learning anything new, and the crossing the conditioning, the current conditioning that we have. And therefore, we have to remain teachable, we have to remain accountable to at least one personality in our spiritual life and also in the material life. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura
Jai.
Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you,
Jai.
Thank
Prabhupada.
you,
Thank you,
Prabhupada.
everyone.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Prabhuji, एक
Prabhuji.
प्रश्न
Hare
विचारू
Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
प्रभुजी आपण chanting करतो with beads, okay, and it is always recommended to do chanting with beads, okay, but why it is recommended to do chanting with beads? Why can't we just chant like just मतलब उठता बसता का आपण chanting नाही करू शकत without beads?
Yeah, good question. See,
कारण
when we chant, yes.
हा प्रश्न विचारायचा मागचा उद्देश असा आहे, कारण संत तुकाराम, भक्त प्रल्हाद हे काय बीट्स घेऊन चॅन्टिंग करत नव्हते ना, मग आपण का असं करतो?
Right, right. So there are two things here, right? One thing is that whenever we are chanting with beads, our sense of touch is very solidly engaged. So japa, what is japa? What is bhakti? Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So when we are chanting with the beads, when we are chanting, our tongue is engaged. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Right? Our ear, sense of ear is also engaged. One is hearing what one is chanting. And when we are using the beads, what happens is our sense of touch, which very helps in a very powerful concentration, that is also engaged. Another important reason is one has to, it is said that Sankhya Purvaka Namagana Natibhi. One has to refer, one has to have a sankalpa of some Sankhya. And so, how will take care of Sankhya? So, Sankhya is taken care by chanting the holy names. So, you must have seen that, the great sages taking a vow that they will chant 13 crores of Ram Nam or this or that. There is always a Sankhya associated with the Nam. And this is recommended by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is followed by Shada Goswamis. Sankhya Purvaka Nama Gana Natibhi. That one has to have certain Sankhya in one's mind.
ओके, म्हणजे we should त्याचे statistics maintain करायचे in short.
Right. Yes. So, and another thing is, just like somebody is a basic student of mathematics, right? He's a beginning student of mathematics. He will be doing all the calculation on the hand also. He will be doing 2 plus 2. He will be doing it on the hand, on his fingers, right? But one who is advanced in mathematics, he will do all the mathematics in the mind. So
Correct.
similarly, for the beginning sadhaka, but in the spiritual life, that even the advanced devotees, although they are meditating on the Lord constantly, still to teach us, and therefore everybody, beginning sadhaka to do the maths on the fingers, and advanced sadhaka to teach the beginning sadhakas that we are also doing maths on the fingers, they chant, right? They chant on the beads. And therefore we see such personalities like Radhanath Maharaj, he will come in the association of devotees and chant. Lokanath Swami, in the association of devotees and chant on the beads. So on an advanced stage, they will chant even beyond the beads, but on the beads is always recommended and always required. Right?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Yes, we
Hare
can hear
Krishna.
you.
हाँ प्रभु जी, आपने एप्रिसिएशन के 3 पॉइंट बताए, एप्रिसिएशन क्विक एंड डू द पॉइंट एंड द जेन्युइन रियल फुल फिल ऑफ द एप्रिसिएशन. एप्रिसिएशन करने के बाद इज द फ्रंट फॉर जो सामने का
So
पर्सन.
this is how we should give appreciation. And how should we receive appreciation? Very important point. We should receive appreciation as just saying that thank you, Krishna's mercy. Right. We should not go to the two extremes. One extreme is, yes, Prabhuji, you realized very late. Or something like that. And sometimes another extreme is people just run away from appreciation. No, Prabhuji, not like, I mean like that. So one should receive also appreciation gracefully, giving credit to the Supreme Lord, saying that thank you, Krishna's mercy of Guru Maharaj, something like that.
Take it as an inspiration.
One should take it as an inspiration
अच्छा
to do further activities, more activities. This is the right way of receiving appreciation.
yes, that's the point
Correct?
I'm thinking. Okay, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.